So glad to be with you. And again, my name is Jeff Fuller. You can find all of these interviews at J Fuller Interviews on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can certainly subscribe on YouTube. It's a little greater than sign at the bottom of the screen. And just you can subscribe to this interview, go back and look at others, and find future ones as well. But I'm so excited now to have Mr. JB John Bryant joining the program. John, how are you?
Great. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for taking the time. You shared off air that your wife is pregnant. And so, congratulations. But during this time, man, what a crazy time to be alive, huh?
Wow, you said it. That's a very loaded statement. But yeah, but we're looking forward to new life, new beginnings with our third child. My wife Allison is, quite frankly, anxious is a nice way to put it, for this baby to be delivered, and so are his brother and sister.
Well, we'll definitely be praying for you and the entire family. And I know that you are a man of faith. You posted a, discouraging Twitter post, I guess it was, the other day. And with the social injustice and everything taking place in this world, seemingly too much to handle, especially with the pandemic, COVID going on. Um, how do you want to raise your kids to believe in God and have faith, but also understand people are not always, well, who they were created to become?
Yeah, no, that's yes, that's another loaded question, but an easy one in my mind because to what you alluded to, the situation where I was called a racial slur in my backyard, and my immediate response was to pray for the man who said it, and that's kind of how I've always been raised. It's kind of my feeling. It's kind of what molds me as a man, and um, I want to raise my children to be slow to anger, but be quick to respond the way that God and Jesus would, which is not always easy for some, but um, it comes quite easy for me because I think that has more to do with the love I have in my heart and what I think this world ultimately is more of.
Now, John, let's talk a little bit about basketball. We'll get to serious stuff in a bit. But being with the Philadelphia 76ers, you're from down that way. The interruption in the season, for you personally, do you think that's a good thing for the 76ers?
Yeah, I would only say it's a good thing in terms of where we ended in, I think, in March, which actually we played. The guy in your picture, Christian Wood, played for Detroit. That was our last game um, before the hiatus, and our team is not healthy at that point. And so Ben Simmons had been out with a back injury that he suffered versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Joel Embiid had been out. Um, and so we weren't at full strength had the season continued and had gone into the playoffs. But seemingly, it seems like we're going to be healthier and could have our team at full strength as we enter into Orlando.
Now, John, when did you want to become a coach? Is that something you always knew was in your future?
No, not at all. Will Voigt.
Mm.
Will Voigt is a tremendous friend, mentor. Everything you would say about a person that you admire is embodies Coach Voigt. And so, like I got the opportunity, or he gave me the opportunity to play for him for, I would say, 3.5 seasons,
Yeah.
3 in Vermont, and I wouldn't even call it a half a season in Bakersfield. But once I get injured, he persuaded me to take this coaching route. I wanted to always ultimately be a teacher, and I just, in some capacity, because I just felt that I had this innate ability, almost responsibility, to lead. Maybe it's my faith, maybe it's my connection with people, but he I don't know, somehow got me to see that basketball could be a tool and an avenue to teach. And so that's kind of what ultimately led me to become a coach.
And now here's a picture of you with the Bakersfield Jam. And I would also say with you teaching, you'd be a pretty intimidating teacher. You are not a short man, so maybe that would demand respect off the bat. Um, I just wanted to go back, trying to hit. Yeah, here we go. Here's a picture of Will Voigt, the Vermont Frost Thieves. And you certainly were a crowd favorite. I shared this story before that we were playing, or you had just finished practicing in Burlington, and I showed up at the gym and I asked you to a 3-point competition, and you said, "Well, I'm not a 3-point shooter," and I cockily said yes because I want to win, and I think I did beat you. But anyway, regardless,
Probably did. Yeah, absolutely.
but you had just finished practice, and I'm just a fan. But you made time. You seemed maybe more so than other players to understand what the Frost Thieves meant to Vermont. Did that come naturally just to care about people, or did you realize that Vermont really, especially Barrie Central Vermont, really clung to the Frost Thieves?
Yeah, so I knew that once I was kind of immersed in the Vermont community, how much the Frost Heave meant to the team, but more, I guess the bigger uh, picture within myself is I knew I was a limited basketball player, and
Mm,
I didn't love basketball playing it, but I loved the people and how it affected people's lives, and which is why I enjoyed the traveling, and in particular Vermont. Vermont just the community embraced our teams. And it was, like I said a few moments ago, it was my responsibility to embrace them.
yeah.
I just felt like it was something we both needed, and I enjoyed it.
So talk to me a little bit about the process. The Vermont Frost Thieves, a new ABA team. How did you find out about the Frost Thieves? Was there like an open tryout, or were you like a draft pick? How did that work out?
I let me see if I can recall. Um, uh, I played my first professional year in England, so a lower division, lower level basketball overseas. I got an opportunity to get fish and chips and see London and see some of Europe. Uh, but the basketball wasn't at a very high level. It's since improved, but my agent at the time, who was actually one of my high school coach, I don't even know if he's an agent anymore, but he got me in touch with Coach Voigt. And I went on this tour, and it somehow led me to coach. And I knew nothing of it, so I did my research, and I was online, and I saw Alex Wolf and how well respected he was within the sports writing community, and Coach Voigt and his path to becoming, and how he became the Frost Heave, coach, and how he was a Cabot Vermont or Vermonter. And I don't think I was a draft pick until my third season in the PB. I think we moved to the PBL,
Yeah.
and then I was drafted, which was a hilarious story because I was at the draft, which was funny. But I remember the first day I wish I could remember the name of the hotel. I was in China. I was in this tour, and I remember missing seeing the Great Wall to come back because I was eager to start training camp. In hindsight, what was I thinking? And so I came back, and I was in. I wish I could remember the hotel we stayed in, and then Coach Voigt, whom I never met prior to this, knocks on the door, and I was like, "You're the coach," and I can say that now because I have a great deal of respect, and he's my friend, of course. Um, but he was just young guy, like that. It took me aback a little bit, and but I really respect the way that he coached our teams in the 3 seasons I coached or I played there
Yeah.
for him. And wow, I mean, in our track record, he led us to 2 championships and almost a third. Had we not been injured.
Right. It's a pretty amazing story, especially for Vermonters. We always go back to those days. And I remember Carrie Lyons and the Free Carrie Lyons chants, and just seeing all you guys hanging out. It was just so much fun to be a basketball fan here in this state. And I just wanted to go back to something you said about being a role player. You played at St. Joe's. You guys had a really good team. I'd also say a great team for when you played. And you had to fill a role because you had Jameer Nelson, Delonte. You had guards, you had scorers. How did you learn to fit that role that the team needed versus trying to bring attention to say, hey, I can score two, or look at me, coach, I need more minutes? Or how would you tell young players, especially, to understand the role and to work hard at that craft?
Well, every great team, its players understands and contributes to their role. I don't know if I was maybe wiser or not, more naive or whatever, but I understood the role that I did play with that team. And I knew in order for us to all be successful and all get to the places where we wanted to go, both on the court, off the court, wherever, we all had to buy into that. And so I don't know. I think it's one of those things to where you just you I knew my abilities, inabilities, I knew myself, and I knew how I can help my teammates. And so all I wanted to do was help my teammates
Hmm.
and our coaching staff win. And I felt my biggest contribution to the team came in my friendship, with my teammates, and my friendship with our coaching staff. I feel like I was this conduit between the players and staff that can kind of keep us together, and not necessarily by how many baskets I scored or how many rebounds I grabbed, but more how I helped us be together on the floor.
Yeah, there's a life lesson in that. Perhaps it's because I grew up in Vermont, or I wasn't good enough to be recruited at all. Excuse me. But what was that recruitment process like for you to go to St. Joe's and then for you to go there and finish your career, your collegiate career there?
It was very fast, and so I always joked that I wasn't a very good player, but I had to be good enough and to obviously go to St. Joe's. I wasn't recruited very heavily into my senior year in high school. But I just always had this belief in myself, um, and that I was. This is going to sound really cheesy, but almost destined for bigger things
Hmm.
other than myself. And so uh, I don't know. I wasn't recruited by St. Joe's traditionally, but I wasn't seen by the team and their coaching staff until after I played my final game in high school in Virginia. And so um, what happened was I went to this senior showcase, and I just was telling my parents. I said, and prior to that, my parents were like, "Hey, if you don't get a scholarship, I don't know how you're going to go to college."
Hmm.
And so, with all that in mind, I wanted to go to college and I wanted to play basketball. And so, I was like, I need to do something in order to earn a scholarship. So, I went to this showcase, and I remember just playing like on another level. And one of it was such a blessing that one of my assistant coaches was there. He then told our then head coach, Coach Martelli, to come down to see me at an open gym where I just was playing out of my mind, and he offered me on the spot. And this was in April. Like I was like one of the latest signings in all Division One
Hmm.
basketball, and so yeah,
Hey,
it's
so I
great.
have a question for you. Delonte West, the video was everywhere, social media. When you look at past teammates that have struggled, um, how do you balance wishing you could do more, but also understanding that they are where they are and they need to help? You don't have to be the savior, have that savior complex where you need to help everybody that could use a hand from you.
That's a hard one to answer. That's a hard one. That's a hard one to answer. I don't really want to go into that, if I may.
Yeah.
I, all I'll say, I pray for Delonte and
Yeah.
other teammates in his situation. Um, that's just a tough one that I don't really want to get into, if you
Sure.
don't respectfully.
Oh, I certainly understand. And
Yeah.
now the fact that you're an assistant coach with the Philadelphia 76ers, I imagine there's people like me that are constantly reaching out for a few minutes of your time or asking you to do this or that. So, how do you balance that effort out of saying, hey, I have a full time job, I have a growing family, I need to limit the pulls that I get from other people? What navigates you to make those decisions?
It's really hard because ultimately at my core, I'm a people person. And so it is very hard balance that I haven't found out how to balance well. And so the one thing as I became a coach, the biggest thing and the biggest hurdle I had to kind of overcome is time management. Because as a player, you just show up at the gym for 2 hours and then
Yeah.
you go home and you fall asleep and you watch TV or you listen to music or you do whatever you do. But like like you said, it's just now it's I have to balance and manage my time between my wife, I want to be a great husband to, and my soon to be three children, who I want to be a great father to, my parents, my in-laws, my friends, my job. And so I try to make time for it all. Um, and I know I can't. So saying that I can't is okay at times, and people understand uh, that in my core I want to do all these things and I want to help. But I think if I'm honest and open, that they understand if I say I can't do it. And so
Definitely, and
I try.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you making the time for me and for this. I was told I'm a pastor, as I shared before. Somebody said that you can always do more, but you can never do enough.
Mm.
Just the world we live, so you have to set up those boundaries and have honest conversations with people. I want to switch to basketball talk a little bit more. You're a big guy. Like, did you lift? Were you just a genetic freak? Were you just gifted, or was that something where you really enjoyed hitting the weight room?
I didn't enjoy hitting the weight room until I got to the D League. I don't. It's funny. I look back on a couple of pictures recently, and I was skinny. I was so skinny, and I remember my freshman roommate. We would always Jeff Miller, and we played at St. Joe's, and we just would always just eat. And I would always just pound protein shakes because I never had access to food. And the
Mm,
thing is, and I don't want that to come off like I'm like this underprivileged guy. I had two-parent household and a
yeah.
nice neighbor, but like I just never had enough food. And so I always had food at my disposal. I could use this card that they gave me that had money on it, and so I gained a tremendous amount of weight in college. But then when I got to the G League, we had an amazing um, strength coach who just changed the way I thought about my body and lifting and strength. And so Tim DeFrancesco really just wow. And so like from there, I just thought about the way I worked out and thought about how I can improve my body from there. And yeah, I
So
think prior to that, it was genetics, and I had this frame, but I just never did anything with it.
So what did you finish at? You're about 6'8", 6'9". Is that how tall were you in high school? When did you get your growth spurt?
Yeah, so in high school, I remember I was ninth grade, I was 6'3", and I grew to be 6'7", and then somehow I've called myself 6'8" now. So I think because I'm like bulkier, but I think my official height without shoes is 6'6" and a half.
Okay.
But with shoes, I think I'm 6'8". So
Now, who did you grow up watching as far as the pros?
that's a good question, and I always get this. Really, I loved Reggie Miller.
Okay.
I don't know why. I think I- his man, his everything, the way he competed every day, the way he was kind of this underdog in his story
Yeah.
with his inability to walk early on, like growing up. Just I felt a little bit of that. Not that I had the physical ailments that he
Right.
had, but like I wasn't a great player growing up, but I felt like he just embodied everything that I wanted to be, and like this grit, this toughness. Probably since he went up against his sister all the time,
Yeah.
but like um, just the era of basketball at that time in the '90s, just watching the physicality of the game. That's kind of what I grew up kind of watching, and what I love. Even now, I just love that.
Now, did you have any siblings growing up?
I did, yes, and so I have a younger, 7 years younger brother, and I have an older half sister.
Okay.
I only grew up with my younger brother, and so um, we're 7 years apart. So there's no back and forth with basketball, and he's only 6 feet now, and so there was always this height disparity with anything athletic.
Well, that's my brother is what 3 years older than me, and he's about 5 inches taller. And so that's what I say that why he's better than me. And he said, no, he's just taller. I'm just not as good. So I don't know what that says, but it is what it is. Hey, a few questions, and I'll get you out. John Bryant, staying on, making some time. Thanks again for doing this. Being a part of the NBA as an assistant coach, is this like your wildest dreams? Is this something that once Will Voigt turned you on to coaching, you really felt you could make it? What are your thoughts, ambitions now?
Um, Jeff, there's no rush, and my kids are asleep. My wife is relaxing, being
Awesome.
very pregnant upstairs. So take as long as you want. I mean, as long as
Oh
the
yeah.
time that you have.
Okay.
We don't need to rush this. But to answer your question, Will he really sparked uh, the love. Like I think I mentioned earlier, I didn't love basketball as a player, but I truly love basketball as a coach now,
Hmm.
which is something that I never thought in my wildest dreams would happen. Um, and where I am, the platform that I have, and the coaches that I'm around every day is amazing. First of all, uh, learning from Will propelled me to where I am today. He's so meticulous with his approach to the game,
Hmm.
how he thinks the game, and I was, he held me accountable in ways no one else probably has,
Right.
in which now I hold my own self accountable to a standard of my work, which is like I can fit in any system. And then when I moved to be with Kevin Young in Delaware, one of the first pictures you showed in the G League, his his love and aggression and for the game, and his knowledge mixed with what I learned from Will just helped me grow even more. And then now with Coach Brown, uh, wow, like I have like a plethora of people. I have like a coaching Rolodex, so to speak. Coach Brown's curiosity and like unwavering like spirit to teach our guys and to like have compassion for our guys. And I've coached with a number of other now head coaches, and Monty Williams, um, Lloyd Pierce. Monty Williams is in Phoenix. Lloyd
Right.
Pierce is in Atlanta, and Billy Lang, who is at my old university, St. Joseph's University, and Jim O'Brien, who was a former,
Yeah.
not to Ime Udoka this year, who's going to be a head coach soon in our league. Kevin Young's going to be a head coach in our league. I have been surrounded by these people and this talent to where all you got to do is show up and like you become 100 times smarter and 100 times better coach.
Well, I think you hit on a huge point is that you seemingly go in wanting to learn, whether it's young players, young coaches, they want to tell how much they know. I'm learning this. People tell me as a host, people want to hear the guest speak in their answer. They don't want to know how much I know. Is that something that you've always had, that you were just craving that knowledge from other people, or did you just observe the need for that from watching other people either mess up or just grow in that way?
Well, I think the knowledge that I was craving kind of shifted a little bit as I became a coach in the NBA. The knowledge I was craving as a young adult is really how to navigate through the world, particularly as an African American. And so I learned a lot from my mother, who just she's the sweetest person, and every time I'm in church, kind of helped me speak, and and like I crave that knowledge on how to be better relational, right? Like
Yeah.
how to speak in front of the church, how to sing in front with the church choir, how to navigate through life in our world with all its issues, with love, right? So that was a knowledge that I kind of acquired at an early age. But then as I became a coach, I had a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of shortcomings, and a lot of there's just a whole world of stuff I needed to
Yeah.
learn. And as I quote unquote continue to climb the ladder to where I am as an assistant, there's still a tremendous amount of things I'm learning. And I, I think uh, I'm learning now, not necessarily to continue to climb the ladder, but for our players to trust me. And so I want to acquire the knowledge to help our players the best way I can. And so that they trust me that whatever I say, I have thoroughly vetted the whole coaching world to give them the best, of me, and that they trust everything that I'm saying, that they can now apply, excuse me, in the games.
And that's huge. And that prompts this more serious topic. And maybe it is because, again, I wasn't great at basketball, played in Vermont. I actually played against Will Voigt in high school. He was kind of our rival playing smallest schools in Vermont. But when you're around basketball and you know the object is to score more points than the other team, you love having good teammates. And so I actually played with a black kid, and it was no racial whatever. If anything, it was reversed. He was just uplifted, applauded. He was like the star of the team because he was good. And you're like, oh, it's great having him on the team. But now it seems as though uh, there's such a, if, well, let me just back up for a quick second. If we talk about President Obama, and if we didn't mention he was the first black president, some people would say, well, you're being racist or prejudiced. Then if you had mentioned President Obama being the first black president, people say, oh, you're being racist. Why don't you just call him president number 44? I think it's 44. And why does it seem like we always have to argue when we're trying to have these debates? Why can't we just listen to learn from each other? And as a coach, how have you seen that? How have you learned how to teach your players how to live better than how a lot of us have been?
Yeah, well, wow, there's a lot in that. I think what's helped me kind of navigate through all this, and I'll speak to the coaching piece a little bit, first, is um, I learned how to become. I think it's something that works, or maybe it doesn't work, something against me. But I've learned to be vulnerable and say I don't know.
Mm,
Um, and but let's find out. I'll find out for you, and let's work through it. And so rather than just in being honest with the player, with I have their best intentions in mind on how to figure out the answer that they're asking me, and versus me just saying the first thing that comes to my mouth, and so in my mind. And so I would, if more people applied that same thought and ideals to life and race and human beings, then I think we'd come a long way. But I think, um, it's not, and most people don't, and they rush to judgment, and they rush to say something. They rush to say they have the answers. They don't. They aren't quick to listen. Like
yeah.
our players are way smarter than we give them credit sometimes. And all I want to do is just listen and learn myself, and then I can then properly help them. And if we had more conversations in our communities, um, of different races, of same races, of whatever, then I think we come a long way as humans. But we're all kind of too stuck in our own ways, and don't want to be vulnerable and let our guard down and let our ego kind of run things, that it becomes what the world is today. And if I can change that one person, one interview, one conversation at a time, then I'm doing hopefully my part.
And you've said it a few times that if we would be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to become angry, that would definitely help in a lot of ways. And going back when you were in Vermont, you were ready to embrace the Vermont culture instead of making Vermonters embrace who you were. And I think that really built bridges and connected people to you, John Bryant, the person, not just a basketball player. Um, I just think about basketball again. I'm just this goofball that loves it. Being an assistant, being a coach, being on the bench during NBA games, are you ever like get caught up in the game of like, oh my goodness, did you see what Steph Curry did? Or did you see that move by Joel Embiid, who's just huge? He shouldn't be able to move like that. Tell me a story where you just kind of get caught up and said, whoa, I have to remember I'm a coach, not just a fan.
Yeah, that happens more often than I'd like to kind of like admit. And just because the players in our league are incredible and their talents exceed a lot of my imagination on where I think they can go. And so I remember my first game in the NBA coaching. Um, I think we played Oklahoma City, and Russell Westbrook was with them still, and I was just wow, like astounded by his ability, his not only athletic ability, his tenacity,
Yeah.
his whatever. I don't know. Like he just has it. Like every time he set foot on the floor, he is just 100% committed to helping his team. However, like with the ball, off the ball, emotionally, and I saw him with the ball go up and down the court as like I've never seen, and he has this athletic ability that was just unmatched. I hadn't seen anything prior to that, and fast forward to this season, something happened. Oh, I forget. I'm on the bench, and I think we're on national TV, and one of our players like dunks it like crazy, like over a guy, and I like stand up. I forget. I stand up as a fan. I'm like, oh, and then like, I don't know if anyone else caught it, but like all the replays I saw, down the line on the internet, whatever, I see myself and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like because usually I'm fairly like stoic and I just like am just you know deadpan face,
Yeah.
just nothing. But then but certain things, I'm like, wow, like these players are incredible, like unbelievable, and then like the players like, oh, I saw JB, you got up, it got you excited too. It's just like, yeah, sometimes you lose it, you're in the moment, and so that happens all the time, unfortunately.
Now, I had the opportunity to interview James Donaldson, longtime NBA center, way back when, and he was a 7-footer. He said he never shot a 3-point shot in his NBA career. Can you remember how many 3-point shots you've put up in your professional career?
Zero.
The same, huh?
I, you know, I, yes, I knew I couldn't shoot. I knew that's a bad way to phrase it. I could shoot.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to shoot. I just honestly, I knew that it wasn't needed for our team at that
Hmm.
point. And so, why would I shoot when Pat Carroll, shot 40 something percent from
Yeah.
three? That's kind of how I saw it. And I think I was playing the analytics game early in my
Yeah.
career. But no, I hadn't shot anything, even into when I could, and I was the guy who needed to score when I was overseas.
So happy Father's Day, a day late, but congratulations again on the coming of your third child. Uh, when you look back at your upbringing, you mentioned your mom a lot as well, but who are a couple mentors that really gave you that? You seem like you have an old soul, like you're very considerate, thoughtful, ahead of your times, very mature when you were younger and understanding with the Vermont Frost Heaves and the Vermont culture. Where did you pick up those traits, or was it you were just born with them?
First, happy Father's Day to you, belated again. I think uh, I think it is my mom. She taught me a lot just about people, and
Hmm.
not necessarily she wasn't like you need to do this, you need to do that. It was more like just seeing her interact. she still handwrites notes and sends them to people. She calls and checks up on people. She just is an incredible woman. And as I got into my career, I took it upon myself to align myself with people who have been there before.
Hmm.
Um, so Will became a mentor. Rod Baker, who I worked with Will in Bakersfield, is a mentor of mine. Um, just I just align myself. It's gonna sound, but with older
Yeah.
people um, who are willing to take me being annoying and calling them from time to time, um, just to ask them certain things. And um, as I've gotten older myself, I feel like it's now my responsibility to do the same.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I think it started with my mom. I'm so blessed to have her in my life. My father, he gave me my competitive nature and to like always do my best and things that fathers do. But my compassion and my kindness and my soul comes from her. And then I guess my knowledge and wisdom that I'm now acquiring that I haven't quite gotten is now coming from the elders.
Hmm.
And it's going to sound, but in particularly, I kind of attach myself to older African American men. Um, just, it just, I who have who are successful and have been to where I want to be. Um, and it's just something that I feel like I naturally gravitate myself
Well, there's a
toward.
book. There's a book I just finished called The Hero Maker, and it said too often kids want to be the hero when we need to be the hero makers, and I think you truly are a hero maker. I'll get you out on these final memories. This thought: winning back-to-back ABA championships in Vermont with the Vermont Frost Thieves. It seemed as though that it was such a phenomenal atmosphere. Is that a memory that you'll always have?
Yeah, I can't describe it. So the first one, it happened so fast by such a huge margin that it almost seemed like it just was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Like it just seemed like this magical season that we, Coach Voigt, just always had us believing that that nothing else was going to happen. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then riding the second wave into the next season with a little bit of changing of personnel. Um, well, actually, it's one of my best friends who actually now Brett Gravitt was on that team, and I think we had Dwayne Lee. But now Brett Gravitt, we in practice pushed each other every day, right?
Mm.
Like we were almost like on opposite ends of the spectrum, and we
Yeah.
never hung out, but we had this competitive drive where we always butted head in practice. And then now, fast forward, I don't know, call it 10 years later or so, we are like best friends,
Hmm.
and he was in my wedding and I was in his wedding. But it's I brought friendships. I'm trying to like bring it all together. I brought
Yeah.
friendships. I have my very close friend in Coach Voigt. Um, and those memories uh, still live with me today uh, because who would have knew? Who would have thought? Like in the mainstay in South Burlington, and then driving to Barry,
Yeah.
and just I would have never thought that that state, those cities would embrace us the way they did, but they did, and the people still mean a lot to me. Um, to where it's a memory I will never forget and always cherish.
And definitely, you are easy to love. You're definitely a fan favorite. And thanks, John, so much for making the time to jump on. John Kirk Bryant on Twitter is where you can follow him. And the 76ers, part of me hates to keep saying that. I have to admit, when Al Horford went to you guys, I was a little upset, but I'm glad personally that he has not had the season that you guys probably would have hoped. But that's basketball. That's the NBA, and I can't wait to have some live basketball. I guess I'll ask this too: uh, what's the time frame? Does everything look like Orlando's a go and you guys are gearing up for that?
Yeah, so from everything that I've heard, it seems that everything is pointing in that direction. There's been a timeline that's been released to the media and the powers that be of we're going to start. It seems like in the next 2 weeks. Can you hear me? I think my headphones just went out.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Okay. Within the next 2 weeks, uh, and they'll give us the protocols on how many players we can work out with. But it all seems like a go. But for the most part, our team is excited. And I think, like I alluded to earlier, we're healthy, and I think we can do some positive things in Orlando. Our goal is to win a championship,
Yeah.
and so I think we have the team to do it. Our coaching staff has really been working um, during this pandemic as if we were going to have a season, and so I think we're well ahead of um, where we could have been. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we look forward to live sports, especially the NBA. John, thanks again. Wish you all the best. Congrats on the third. We'll be praying that everything goes well and that the baby is born before you go to Orlando and everything's set
Thank you, Jeff.
at that
Appreciate it.
time. But hey, thanks
Moses
again, John.
Moses Bryant is my son's name. Going to be
Oh,
my
there we
son's name.
go.
Yeah.
That's a great,
So
strong name. Strong
yes.
name. All right,
Thank
John.
you.
We'll talk to you again.
Thanks.
And again, that was John Bryant. You're listening to Jay Fuller Interviews, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. John Bryant, one of the best. And you can certainly follow him on Twitter at John Kirk Bryant. We'll be back. Talk to you guys later. Take care.